we begin with the Republican National Convention. It enters its second day today after formally nominating President Trump for re-election on Monday. Now, tonight, speakers include First Lady Melania Trump, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in a pre-recorded speech, two of the president's children, and other top Republicans. Last night, Republicans portrayed President Trump as the only solution to the country's problems, arguing he acted aggressively to deal with the coronavirus. Our Ben Tracy is following the convention from the White House.
The Republican National Convention began with the president's version of how he views his handling of the coronavirus.
One leader took decisive action to save lives, President Donald Trump.
But the president downplayed the threat of the virus for months.
It will go away, just stay calm.
In an appearance with essential workers last night, he made a similar claim.
We just have to make this China virus go away, and it's happening.
But there is no evidence the virus is going away. On Sunday alone, there were around 38,000 new cases.
Celebrating America as
the convention promised an optimistic and uplifting message, but it did not always sound that way.
Trump is the bodyguard of Western civilization. Trump was elected to protect our families from the vengeful mob that seeks to destroy our way of life.
They want to destroy this country and everything that we have fought for and hold dear. They want to steal your liberty, your freedom. They want to control what you see and think and believe so that they can control how you live.
That warning was echoed several times, including by the McCloskeys, who were charged with unlawful use of a weapon after they drew their guns on peaceful protesters outside their home in St. Louis earlier this summer.
No matter where you live, your family will not be safe in the radical Democrats' America.
The president's eldest son, Donald Trump Jr., vigorously defended his father.
If Democrats cared for the forgotten men and women of our country, they'd do exactly what President Trump is doing.
As did his former U.S. ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley.
Donald Trump has always put America first, and he has earned 4 more years as president.
Republican Senator Tim Scott played off the convention night theme, Land of Promise.
Our family went from cotton to Congress in one lifetime.
Scott argued the GOP offers the best hope of making the American dream a reality.
Make no mistake, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want a cultural revolution, a fundamentally different America. If we let them, they will turn our country into a socialist utopia.
For more on this, I want to bring in Caitlin Conant and Caitlin Huey-Burns. Caitlin Conant is our CBS News political director, and Caitlin Huey-Burns is a CBSN political reporter in a segment I'm going to call Conversation with the Caitlins. And Caitlin Huey-Burns, I guess you go by CHB sometimes, so that's how I'll try and differentiate between you both as we talk about what we witnessed last night. So, Caitlin Conant, let's start with you. I'm curious of what your general takeaways were from what we saw. I mean, we went through it with Ben Tracy's piece. I mean, the comments like, you won't be safe, the other side will destroy your way of life and steal what you hold dear. What stood out to you? Was it more of a message for Donald Trump or against Joe Biden and the Democrats?
Well, last night, as you just pointed out, Errol, and Ben pointed out in his piece this morning, you saw a lot of the red meat that Donald Trump's base has come to love and will stand outside and for hours to go and hear him say. And so you saw a lot of that in the base rallying. But in order for him to do well this fall, he has to win back some of the voters that he has lost ground with since 2016. And there are 4 key demographics. It's seniors, it's college-educated voters, suburban voters, and independents. And that's why last night, in addition to Don Jr. and a lot of the speakers who gave that red meat to the base, you also had former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley and Republican Senator Tim Scott, who are some of the future diverse leaders of the party who are appealing directly to those groups that President Trump has lost ground with. And in particular, last night, I was really interested. You heard Tim Scott appeal directly to all those voters who say that they're just unhappy with the president's rhetoric. And his message to them was, don't listen to what Donald Trump says and don't listen to what Joe Biden says, but rather listen to what they do. And he argued that in his opinion, He believes Donald Trump has done more for the American people in his first term as president than Joe Biden has done in his decades-long career. So it was a really interesting message to hear from the senator from South Carolina.
Yeah, I thought also you make a good point in focusing on what the former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley and Senator Tim Scott had to say, because it was and did feel separate and apart from the rest of the messaging. So CHB, for you, what, considering that there was that kind of dual message, but it wasn't necessarily balanced, what in your view was the message that the Republican Party was trying to convey last night, if you could boil it down to just one?
Well, I think one chief message is that they kind of wanted people to think about the way things were before the coronavirus hit. And that's because when you look at polling, while the majority of voters disapprove of how Trump has been handling coronavirus, and that's something that is fueling Joe Biden's lead in key battleground states, voters are giving Trump credit on the economy. And that is one silver lining to his campaign, and a reason why a lot of Republicans want Trump to be focused solely on the economy and kind of the way things were, even though Trump is prone to and kind of lives off going off message. But so you heard in a lot of the messaging this kind of idea of just remember how things were before all of this hit. And you heard from Nikki Haley calling this the virus that was given to us by communist China. A lot of blame on China for this virus, and not a lot of discussion about how the administration is handling the pandemic. So that was a message that was, I think, prominent last night, and something I think we can expect moving forward as well.
And what about just comparing this to what we witnessed last week at the Democratic convention? Caitlin Conant, for you, it seems as though the messaging was opposite from what CHB just mentioned. It was a focus on how the president, in their view, had failed in his response to the coronavirus pandemic. What do you think were the major differences?
Well, I think both sides definitely wanted to paint the picture of their opponent. And so last week with the Democrats, you saw them criticizing the president for his failed leadership. You heard the same things from the Republicans last night, and that's pretty standard politics. But one thing, just from a production level, I think Caitlin and I both heard a lot from both the Democrats and the Republicans heading into the conventions about how they wanted to have an opportunity to hear from real people and not as many stuffy politicians. And one thing I was struck by is that the Democrats really seem to embrace the medium we're all living in, where, Errol, I know you're from your home studio, I'm at my house right now, and they did a lot of the same. It was very conversational in many ways and just kind of embraced the moment from a production standpoint. And I think the Republicans last night, although there wasn't the crowds and they did have a lot of these real Americans taking part in the same ways the Democrats did, it still had that podium feel and a lot of that almost a traditional convention in speeches and the applause lines, even though there was no applause. So just from a totally production standpoint, I thought that was very telling, the differences between the two.
And I think no speech exemplified that more than that of Donald Trump Jr.'s partner, Kimberly Guilfoyle, speaking as if it was a packed stadium. And many folks online seemed to react to how disconnected it seemed to the fact that it was effectively an empty room. CHB, for you, looking ahead now tonight, we are supposed to hear from First Lady Melania Trump. We can all remember the controversy in the 2016 speech that she gave when it appeared portions were lifted from First Lady Michelle Obama's speech. What do you think we can expect from our current First Lady?
Well, she's expected to give this speech in the Rose Garden, which she had spearheaded the renovation of, and she is also going to have a small group, an audience of sorts for this speech. Melania Trump has not been a really public figure in terms of being out there giving speeches, engaging with people a lot. She's really taken a behind-the-scenes kind of approach. She's run a Be Best campaign against bullying, even though it has raised a lot of questions since her husband has been accused of being a bully online. So that's something to kind of watch for, how she might thread that needle. But I think Republican voters want to hear from the First Lady, and this setting will be unique, even though it raises questions about the president holding political events in the White House or at the White House.
And Caitlin Conant, what do you look for? What are you looking for tonight? We know President Trump is meant to appear and speak each night, but what difference, what calibration could the Republicans make based on day one?
I think to Caitlin's point this just now, which was a good one, is that we don't hear from the First Lady that often. And so last week at the Democratic convention, you saw a lot of people, whether it was Jill Biden or former primary rivals to former Republicans, speak to Joe Biden's character. And tonight we're hearing from two of his children, Eric and Tiffany, as well as Melania, in a rare occurrence. So I'm curious if they use this opportunity to try and humanize President Trump and speak to the man that they call father and husband.
Yeah, you always look for those unscripted, kind of unpredictable moments. So it will be interesting to see if that emerges tonight at all. Well, great to speak with you both. Conversation with the Caitlins. The segment ends for now, but you can check this out as your latest hot podcast in the near future. Thanks to you both for chatting with me. Appreciate it.